Question 1. The evaluation methodology shows that a mixed environment, incorporating both on-premises legacy systems and cloud-based services, is being integrated. The primary concern is ensuring that the entire integrated environment adheres strictly to the regulatory framework governing data handling and security for financial institutions. Which of the following actions best ensures compliance with this regulatory framework? Option A. Prioritize the integration speed and functionality, deferring detailed compliance checks until after the system is fully operational, with a plan to address any discovered issues reactively. Option B. Rely on the IT department's general understanding of security best practices to ensure compliance, without performing specific audits against the financial institution's regulatory framework. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive audit of all existing configurations in both on-premises and cloud environments against the specific requirements of the financial institution's regulatory framework, identifying any deviations, and implementing targeted remediation plans before full integration. Option D. Proceed with the integration of the cloud services, assuming that the cloud provider's compliance certifications automatically satisfy the regulatory requirements for the mixed environment. Correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive audit of all existing configurations in both on-premises and cloud environments against the specific requirements of the financial institution's regulatory framework, identifying any deviations, and implementing targeted remediation plans before full integration. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid technological adoption and the imperative of regulatory compliance within the context of mixed environments. The complexity arises from integrating diverse systems, each potentially governed by different security postures and data handling protocols, while ensuring a unified and auditable compliance framework. The need for careful judgment stems from the potential for misconfigurations or overlooked vulnerabilities during integration, which could lead to data breaches or non-compliance with the specified regulatory framework. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based methodology for assessing and mitigating compliance gaps. By conducting a thorough audit of existing configurations against the regulatory framework, identifying specific deviations, and then implementing targeted remediation, the organization demonstrates a commitment to due diligence. This proactive stance ensures that all components of the mixed environment are brought into alignment with legal and regulatory requirements, thereby minimizing the risk of penalties and reputational damage. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT governance and the proactive management of compliance obligations. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the integration without a comprehensive compliance audit fails to uphold the regulatory framework. This oversight constitutes a significant ethical and regulatory failure, as it knowingly bypasses critical compliance checks. Such an action could lead to the deployment of systems that are non-compliant from inception, exposing the organization to immediate legal repercussions and data protection violations. Another incorrect approach, which relies solely on vendor assurances without independent verification, also represents a regulatory and ethical failure. While vendor compliance is important, it does not absolve the organization of its own responsibility to ensure that the integrated solution meets the specific requirements of the applicable regulatory framework. This abdication of responsibility can lead to a false sense of security and ultimately result in non-compliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the specific regulatory framework applicable to the environment. 2. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, identifying potential compliance gaps introduced by the integration. 3. Develop a detailed plan for assessing existing configurations against the regulatory requirements. 4. Implement targeted remediation strategies for any identified deviations. 5. Establish ongoing monitoring and auditing processes to maintain compliance. 6. Document all compliance-related activities thoroughly for audit purposes. Question 2. Consider a scenario where an organization operates a mixed IT environment comprising on-premises legacy systems and cloud-based services. The organization handles sensitive customer data that is subject to strict data protection regulations. A new project requires integrating these systems to allow for seamless data sharing and processing. What is the most appropriate approach to ensure regulatory compliance and data security throughout this integration process? Option A. Prioritize the speed of integration by implementing minimal security controls initially and planning to address comprehensive compliance requirements after the systems are fully operational. Option B. Develop and implement a unified security policy and data governance framework that is applied consistently across both on-premises and cloud components, leveraging technologies that can enforce these policies uniformly and conducting regular audits of data access and usage. Option C. Focus security efforts primarily on the cloud-based services, assuming they have more robust built-in security features, and implement only basic data transfer protocols for the on-premises systems. Option D. Rely on the existing security measures of each individual system component, assuming that their independent security is sufficient for the mixed environment. The correct answer is B. Develop and implement a unified security policy and data governance framework that is applied consistently across both on-premises and cloud components, leveraging technologies that can enforce these policies uniformly and conducting regular audits of data access and usage. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical need to maintain data integrity and confidentiality within a mixed environment IT infrastructure, while adhering to specific regulatory frameworks. The complexity arises from integrating systems that may have different security postures and compliance requirements. Careful judgment is required to ensure that data handling practices across all components of the mixed environment meet the highest standards of security and privacy mandated by the relevant regulations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive, risk-based assessment of data flows and access controls across the entire mixed environment. This aligns with the principles of data protection and security mandated by regulatory frameworks that emphasize due diligence, least privilege, and robust auditing. By implementing a unified security policy and leveraging technologies that can enforce these policies consistently across diverse systems, an organization demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance and safeguarding sensitive information. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of data breaches and unauthorized access, which are key concerns for regulators. An incorrect approach that fails to consider the specific data protection requirements of the mixed environment, such as implementing security measures that are only effective in one part of the infrastructure, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to vulnerabilities that expose sensitive data, violating data privacy laws, and potentially resulting in severe penalties. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on the security of individual components without a holistic integration strategy, ignores the interconnectedness of the mixed environment and creates systemic risks. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the overall threat landscape and a failure to meet the organization's duty of care to protect data. Furthermore, an approach that neglects regular auditing and monitoring of data access and usage across the mixed environment would be a failure to comply with regulatory requirements for accountability and transparency, making it impossible to detect or respond to security incidents effectively. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape. This involves identifying all relevant data protection laws and industry-specific guidelines. Next, a comprehensive inventory of all IT assets and data flows within the mixed environment should be conducted. A risk assessment should then be performed to identify potential vulnerabilities and threats. Based on this assessment, a strategy for implementing consistent security controls and data handling policies across the entire environment should be developed. This strategy should include mechanisms for monitoring, auditing, and regular review to ensure ongoing compliance and adaptation to evolving threats. Question 3. The investigation demonstrates a potential security breach on a critical server within a mixed environment network. The system administrator is faced with the immediate need to contain the threat and understand its origin. Considering the regulatory framework for IT security and incident response, which of the following actions best aligns with best professional practice and regulatory compliance? Option A. Immediately isolate the affected network segment, create a forensic image of the compromised server storage, and begin analysis on the image while documenting all steps. Option B, defer a full investigation until a less busy period, hoping the issue resolves itself without intervention. Option C, reboot the server to apply the latest security patches and then investigate the logs for suspicious activity. Option D, directly access and modify log files on the compromised server to remove any evidence of unauthorized access before further investigation. The correct answer is A. Immediately isolate the affected network segment, create a forensic image of the compromised server storage, and begin analysis on the image while documenting all steps. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining system integrity and responding to a potential security incident. The need for rapid assessment and containment must be balanced against the requirement for thorough, documented evidence preservation, especially in a mixed environment context where different operating systems and network protocols may be involved. Careful judgment is required to avoid actions that could compromise the investigation or lead to regulatory noncompliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the preservation of volatile data, which is crucial for forensic analysis. By creating a forensic image of the affected system, the integrity of the original data is maintained while allowing for analysis on a copy. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics and is essential for meeting regulatory requirements related to evidence handling and chain of custody. The immediate isolation of the affected network segment prevents further spread of the potential threat and limits the scope of the incident, which is a standard incident response procedure. Documenting all actions taken ensures accountability and provides a clear audit trail, vital for regulatory compliance and internal review. An incorrect approach that involves immediately rebooting the system to apply security patches without first acquiring a forensic image would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Rebooting can alter or destroy volatile data, e.g., running processes, network connections, memory contents, that is critical for understanding the nature and extent of the incident. This would compromise the integrity of any subsequent forensic analysis and could lead to an incomplete or inaccurate understanding of the event, potentially violating regulations that mandate thorough incident investigation and reporting. Another incorrect approach, such as directly accessing and modifying log files on the suspected compromised system to remove evidence of unauthorized access, represents a severe ethical and regulatory breach. This constitutes tampering with evidence, which is illegal and undermines the entire purpose of an investigation. It would violate principles of data integrity and could lead to severe legal and professional repercussions, including fines and loss of professional licenses. A third incorrect approach, which involves ignoring the incident due to the complexity of the mixed environment and hoping it resolves itself, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a failure to adhere to incident response protocols and a disregard for potential security risks and regulatory obligations. Proactive incident management is a cornerstone of IT security and regulatory compliance. Failing to investigate could lead to further compromise, data breaches, and noncompliance with data protection laws. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured incident response framework. This typically includes preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. When an incident is detected, the immediate priority is to identify the scope and nature of the incident. This is followed by containment to prevent further damage. Crucially, evidence preservation must be integrated into the containment phase. Professionals should consult established forensic best practices and relevant regulatory guidelines for their jurisdiction to ensure all actions are compliant and defensible. Documentation at every step is paramount. Question 4. Upon reviewing system logs, an administrator detects unusual outbound network traffic from a critical server that appears to be exfiltrating data. The server hosts sensitive customer information. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to comply with regulatory frameworks governing data protection and incident response? Option A. Immediately isolate the affected server from the network to prevent further data exfiltration and engage the designated incident response team. Option B. Inform senior management and legal counsel about the suspicious activity and await their explicit instructions before taking any action. Option C. Attempt to manually block the suspicious traffic at the firewall without isolating the server, hoping to stop the exfiltration while minimizing disruption. Option D. Immediately shut down the affected server to halt all activity and prevent any further data loss? The correct answer is A. Immediately isolate the affected server from the network to prevent further data exfiltration and engage the designated incident response team. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining system integrity and responding to a potential security incident. The administrator must balance the immediate need to investigate a suspected breach with the regulatory obligation to ensure data confidentiality and integrity. Careful judgment is required to avoid actions that could either compromise the investigation or violate compliance mandates. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a controlled and documented response. By isolating the affected systems and engaging the incident response team, the administrator adheres to established protocols designed to contain damage, preserve evidence, and facilitate a thorough investigation. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that mandate prompt and effective incident handling to mitigate harm and comply with data protection obligations. The systematic approach ensures that actions are traceable, justifiable, and minimize the risk of further compromise or data loss. An incorrect approach involving immediate system shutdown without proper containment or notification would be professionally unacceptable. This action could lead to data loss, disrupt critical business operations, and potentially destroy crucial forensic evidence needed for the investigation, thereby violating regulatory requirements for data preservation and incident response. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to resolve the issue independently without involving the security team or following established incident response procedures, poses significant risks. This could result in misdiagnosis, accidental deletion of evidence, or the introduction of further vulnerabilities, all of which contravene the principles of due diligence and regulatory compliance in handling security incidents. Finally, an approach that involves immediate public disclosure of the incident before a full assessment is completed is also professionally unacceptable. This premature disclosure could alert attackers, cause undue panic among users or stakeholders, and potentially violate breach notification requirements if not handled according to specific legal and regulatory timelines and content mandates. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a multi-step process. First, recognize and assess the potential incident. Second, activate the established incident response plan. Third, contain the incident while preserving evidence. Fourth, investigate the root cause and scope of the breach. Fifth, eradicate the threat. Sixth, recover affected systems. And seventh, conduct a post-incident review to improve future responses. Throughout this process, adherence to relevant regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data protection and incident reporting, is paramount. Question 5. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a critical security vulnerability being exploited on a legacy Linux server within the mixed environment, which hosts sensitive customer data. The proposed solution involves updating the server's operating system and applying specific security patches. However, the IT operations team has expressed concerns that these updates might disrupt critical business applications running on the server, potentially leading to significant downtime and financial losses. The compliance officer has emphasized the need to adhere to data protection regulations. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action to address this situation while ensuring regulatory compliance and operational stability? Option A. Immediately disable the affected services on the legacy server to prevent exploitation, and postpone the updates indefinitely until a less disruptive solution can be found. Option B. Implement a broad, system-wide security hardening policy across all servers in the mixed environment without specific testing on the legacy server, assuming it will mitigate the risk. Option C. Schedule the updates during a planned maintenance window after thorough testing in a staging environment, and develop a detailed rollback plan in case of unforeseen issues. Option D. Proceed with the updates during business hours to minimize the window of vulnerability, accepting the risk of potential application disruption. Correct answer is C. Schedule the updates during a planned maintenance window after thorough testing in a staging environment, and develop a detailed rollback plan in case of unforeseen issues. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining robust security controls in a mixed environment and the potential for operational disruption or increased complexity. The need to balance these competing demands requires careful judgment, a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape, and a proactive approach to risk management. The LPIC-3 Mixed Environments exam focuses on the practical application of Linux in diverse IT infrastructures, and regulatory compliance is a critical aspect of managing such environments responsibly. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, documented, and risk-informed decision-making process by engaging relevant stakeholders, conducting a thorough impact assessment, and aligning proposed changes with established security policies and regulatory requirements. The organization ensures that any modifications to security controls are both effective and compliant. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible IT governance, which are paramount in regulated industries. Specifically, in the context of mixed environments, understanding how different operating systems and services interact under new security configurations is crucial to avoid unintended vulnerabilities. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disabling security controls without proper assessment or authorization represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses established change management procedures, undermines the integrity of the security posture, and could lead to breaches of data confidentiality, integrity, or availability. Such actions would likely violate data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction. Though for this exam we focus on general principles of IT governance and security, best practices within a Linux context, and internal security policies, exposing the organization to legal penalties, reputational damage, and financial losses. Another incorrect approach, such as implementing a blanket security policy across all systems without considering the specific needs and risks of the mixed environment, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of nuanced understanding of the environment and can lead to either oversecuritization, hindering legitimate operations, or undersecuritization, leaving systems vulnerable. It fails to acknowledge the unique characteristics of different components within the mixed environment, potentially creating new security gaps or operational inefficiencies. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory and compliance obligations relevant to the organization's industry and data. 2. Clearly defining the scope and impact of any proposed change. 3. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment considering both security and operational implications. 4. Engaging all relevant stakeholders, including security teams, system administrators, and business unit representatives. 5. Developing and documenting a clear plan for implementation, including rollback procedures. 6. Obtaining necessary approvals before proceeding with any changes. 7. Thoroughly testing and validating the implemented changes. 8. Continuously monitoring the environment for any adverse effects or new risks. Question 6. Examination of the data shows that a mixed environment network, comprising Windows servers, Linux workstations, and Mac OS client machines, is currently managed with disparate security tools and manual configuration checks. This approach has led to inconsistencies in firewall rules, patch levels, and user access controls across different operating systems, raising concerns about potential security vulnerabilities and audit readiness. Which of the following strategies best addresses these challenges while adhering to regulatory frameworks that mandate consistent security posture and auditability in mixed OS environments? Option A. Deploy separate, specialized security solutions for each operating system and manually consolidate reports from these tools for compliance audits. Option B. Focus security hardening efforts primarily on the Windows Server environment, as it hosts the most critical applications, and address Linux and Mac OS systems only when specific incidents occur. Option C. Implement a centralized security information and event management system integrated with a robust configuration management tool capable of enforcing unified security policies across all operating systems, coupled with automated compliance reporting. Option D. Rely on individual system administrators to maintain security configurations for their respective operating systems, with periodic, ad hoc reviews conducted by the IT security team. The correct answer is C. Implement a centralized security information and event management system integrated with a robust configuration management tool capable of enforcing unified security policies across all operating systems, coupled with automated compliance reporting. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments, ensuring consistent application of security policies across diverse operating systems and network segments. The core professional difficulty lies in balancing the need for robust security with the operational realities of maintaining interoperability and user productivity in a heterogeneous IT infrastructure. A failure to implement a unified and compliant security posture can lead to vulnerabilities, data breaches, and non-compliance with regulatory mandates. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a centralized, policy-driven management strategy. By leveraging a security information and event management (SIEM) system and a robust configuration management tool, administrators can establish a single source of truth for security policies. This allows for automated enforcement, continuous monitoring, and rapid response to deviations across all managed systems, regardless of their underlying operating system. This aligns with the principles of proactive security management and regulatory adherence, which often mandate demonstrable control and auditability of security configurations. An incorrect approach that relies solely on manual configuration and disparate tools for each operating system is professionally unacceptable. This method is prone to human error, inconsistencies, and significant delays in patching or policy updates. It creates blind spots in security monitoring and makes it exceedingly difficult to prove compliance during an audit. Specifically, it fails to meet the spirit, if not the letter, of regulations that require a comprehensive and auditable security program. Another incorrect approach that focuses only on the most prevalent operating system ignores the security risks introduced by less common but still critical systems. This creates a fragmented security posture where vulnerabilities on overlooked systems can be exploited to compromise the entire network. Ethically, this represents a failure to protect all organizational assets and data adequately. A third incorrect approach that delegates security policy enforcement entirely to individual system administrators without central oversight or validation is also professionally unsound. While individual administrators may be competent, the lack of a unified framework leads to inconsistent application of policies, potential conflicts between local and global security requirements, and a lack of centralized accountability. This undermines the organization's overall security strategy and its ability to demonstrate compliance. The professional reasoning process for navigating such situations involves a risk-based assessment, prioritizing solutions that offer centralized control, automation, and comprehensive visibility. It requires understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the organization's data and operations, and then selecting tools and methodologies that demonstrably meet those requirements. Continuous evaluation and adaptation of the security strategy are also paramount. Question 7. Performance analysis shows a critical security incident has been detected within a mixed Linux and Windows server environment. The incident involves unauthorized access to a database server. The immediate pressure is to contain the breach and restore services as quickly as possible. What is the most appropriate initial approach to managing this situation from a risk assessment perspective? Option A. Initiate a rapid, structured risk assessment to identify the scope of the breach, potential impact on critical assets, and prioritize containment and remediation actions based on assessed risk levels. Option B. Immediately disconnect all servers that have network connectivity to the compromised database server to prevent further spread. Option C. Rely solely on automated security tools to identify and quarantine all suspicious processes and network connections across the entire environment. Option D. Focus exclusively on restoring the database from the most recent backup, without investigating the root cause or the full extent of the compromise. The correct answer is B. Immediately disconnect all servers that have network connectivity to the compromised database server to prevent further spread. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining system integrity and the need for rapid incident response. The complexity of a mixed environment, involving potentially diverse operating systems, network protocols, and security controls, amplifies the difficulty of accurately assessing risk during a security incident. The urgency of the situation can lead to hasty decisions that might overlook critical dependencies or introduce new vulnerabilities. The correct approach, which involves a structured risk assessment methodology tailored to the incident, represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible system management. By systematically identifying potential threats, vulnerabilities, and the impact of the incident, administrators can prioritize mitigation efforts that are both effective and proportionate. This approach ensures that actions taken are not only reactive but also strategically sound, minimizing collateral damage and adhering to established security frameworks. Regulatory compliance in mixed environments often mandates such a structured approach to incident response and risk management, ensuring that organizations can demonstrate a reasonable and defensible course of action. An incorrect approach that bypasses a formal risk assessment, such as immediately isolating all potentially affected systems without understanding the scope or impact, fails to meet professional standards. This can lead to unnecessary service disruption, impacting business operations, and potentially violating service-level agreements. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due care in understanding the full consequences of actions. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on automated tools without human oversight and contextual analysis, risks misinterpreting data or overlooking subtle indicators, leading to an incomplete or inaccurate risk picture. This can result in inadequate mitigation or the deployment of inappropriate countermeasures, potentially creating new security gaps. A further incorrect approach, focusing only on immediate containment without considering the long-term implications or root cause analysis, neglects the broader responsibility of preventing future incidents and maintaining system resilience, which is a key ethical and professional obligation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the incident's context, followed by a rapid, yet thorough, risk assessment. This involves identifying critical assets, potential threat actors, likely attack vectors, and the potential impact on confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Based on this assessment, a prioritized list of mitigation and containment strategies should be developed, considering their feasibility, effectiveness, and potential side effects. Continuous monitoring and reevaluation of the risk landscape throughout the incident response process are crucial for adapting to evolving threats and ensuring that the chosen course of action remains appropriate. Question 8. Process analysis reveals that a mixed environment comprising legacy Windows servers, modern Linux workstations, and a cloud-based SaaS application is in place. The IT security team is tasked with conducting a risk assessment to ensure compliance and protect sensitive data. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices for this scenario? Option A. Focus the risk assessment efforts primarily on the cloud-based SaaS application, as it is the most modern and likely to contain the most sensitive data. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive inventory of all assets, identify threats and vulnerabilities specific to each component and their interactions, evaluate the likelihood and impact of identified risks, and develop tailored mitigation strategies. Option C. Utilize a generic, widely available risk assessment checklist without specific consideration for the unique interactions between the legacy and modern systems. Option D. Prioritize the implementation of readily available security solutions, such as endpoint detection and response (EDR), on all systems, regardless of the specific risks identified in a formal assessment. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive inventory of all assets, identify threats and vulnerabilities specific to each component and their interactions, evaluate the likelihood and impact of identified risks, and develop tailored mitigation strategies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments where disparate systems and security policies must be integrated. The professional difficulty lies in balancing the need for robust risk assessment with the practical constraints of legacy systems and diverse operational requirements. A failure to adequately assess risks can lead to vulnerabilities, data breaches, or non-compliance with regulatory mandates. The inherent complexity of mixed environments, often involving different operating systems, network protocols, and security controls, amplifies the need for a systematic and thorough risk assessment process. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased risk assessment that begins with a comprehensive inventory and classification of all assets within the mixed environment. This is followed by identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to each component and their interactions. Crucially, the process must then evaluate the likelihood and impact of these threats materializing, leading to a prioritized list of risks. Mitigation strategies, tailored to the specific risks and the capabilities of the mixed environment, are then developed and implemented. This methodical approach ensures that resources are allocated effectively to address the most critical security concerns, aligning with the principles of due diligence and prudent risk management expected under general IT security best practices and potentially specific data protection regulations that mandate risk-based security measures. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to solely focus on the newest or most critical systems, neglecting the security posture of older or less critical components. This creates a weakest link vulnerability, as attackers can exploit less protected systems to gain access to more sensitive data or infrastructure. This failure to conduct a holistic assessment is a direct contravention of the principle of comprehensive security, which is often implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory frameworks that demand a thorough understanding of an organization's entire IT landscape. Another incorrect approach is to rely on generic, off-the-shelf risk assessment templates without tailoring them to the specific technologies, configurations, and operational context of the mixed environment. This leads to an incomplete or inaccurate understanding of the actual risks, potentially overlooking unique vulnerabilities introduced by the integration of different systems. Such a superficial approach fails to meet the standard of a diligent and informed risk assessment, which requires a deep understanding of the specific environment being evaluated. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize the implementation of security controls based on perceived ease of deployment, rather than on the actual risk assessment findings. This can result in spending resources on mitigating low-priority risks while leaving high-priority risks unaddressed. This misallocation of resources is a failure of effective risk management and can lead to regulatory scrutiny if it results in demonstrable security gaps that contribute to an incident. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach risk assessment in mixed environments by adopting a structured, iterative methodology. This begins with a clear understanding of the scope and objectives, followed by asset identification and classification. Threat modeling and vulnerability analysis should be conducted for each component and their interdependencies. Risk evaluation, including likelihood and impact assessment, is paramount for prioritization. Finally, risk treatment strategies, including mitigation, transfer, acceptance, or avoidance, must be developed and implemented, with ongoing monitoring and review. This systematic process ensures that security efforts are aligned with business objectives and regulatory expectations, fostering a resilient and secure IT infrastructure. Question 9. Analysis of how to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment for a mixed IT environment comprising Linux servers, Windows workstations, and various network devices, considering the need to identify and mitigate potential threats across all components while adhering to best practices for data security and privacy. Option A. Utilize a generic, off-the-shelf risk assessment template without specific customization for the unique technologies and configurations present in the mixed environment. Option B. Focus the risk assessment primarily on the Linux server infrastructure, as it is the core of the environment, and assume Windows workstations pose minimal risk due to their widespread use. Option C. Implement a phased risk assessment methodology that includes asset inventory, threat and vulnerability identification, likelihood and impact assessment, and mitigation planning, tailored to the specific technologies within the mixed environment. Option D. Rely exclusively on automated vulnerability scanning tools to identify all potential risks, without incorporating manual analysis or expert judgment. The correct answer is C. Implement a phased risk assessment methodology that includes asset inventory, threat and vulnerability identification, likelihood and impact assessment, and mitigation planning, tailored to the specific technologies within the mixed environment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments where disparate systems and data sources need to be integrated for a comprehensive risk assessment. The professional difficulty lies in ensuring that the chosen risk assessment methodology is not only technically sound for the mixed environment, but also compliant with the relevant regulatory framework. The pressure to deliver a timely assessment without compromising accuracy or compliance adds to the complexity. The core challenge is to balance the need for a holistic view with the practical limitations of data aggregation and analysis across different platforms, while adhering strictly to the LPIC 300-300 exams implied regulatory context, which, for the purpose of this exercise, we will assume aligns with general best practices for data security and privacy as often found in regulated industries, without specifying a particular jurisdiction to maintain the exam's focus on technical principles. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased methodology that first identifies and inventories all relevant assets and data flows across the mixed environment. This is followed by a systematic identification of potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to each component, e.g., Linux servers, Windows clients, network devices. Subsequently, the likelihood and impact of these threats exploiting vulnerabilities are assessed, leading to a prioritized list of risks. Finally, appropriate mitigation strategies are developed and implemented. This approach is best professional practice because it is systematic, comprehensive, and adaptable to the complexities of a mixed environment. It allows for granular analysis of individual components while enabling a consolidated view of overall risk. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and proactive risk management expected in any regulated IT environment, ensuring that all potential attack vectors are considered. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the most prevalent operating system, e.g., Linux, and neglect the risks associated with other systems, e.g., Windows clients. This is a regulatory and ethical failure because it creates blind spots, leaving critical assets unprotected and potentially violating data protection regulations that mandate a comprehensive security posture across all systems handling sensitive data. Another incorrect approach is to use a generic, one-size-fits-all risk assessment template without tailoring it to the specific technologies and configurations present in the mixed environment. This is a failure because it leads to an inaccurate assessment of risks, potentially overestimating or underestimating threats and vulnerabilities, and thus failing to implement effective controls. This can result in non-compliance with regulations that require risk assessments to be proportionate to the actual risks faced. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on automated scanning tools without human oversight and expert analysis. While tools are valuable, they may not identify nuanced risks or context-specific vulnerabilities. This can lead to a superficial assessment, missing critical risks, and failing to meet the due diligence requirements of regulatory frameworks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach risk assessment in mixed environments by adopting a structured, layered methodology. This begins with a thorough understanding of the environment's architecture and data flows. The process should involve both automated tools and expert human judgment. Prioritization of risks based on likelihood and impact is crucial, followed by the development of actionable mitigation plans. Regular review and updates to the risk assessment are essential to maintain an effective security posture in dynamic environments. This systematic process ensures that all aspects of the mixed environment are considered, leading to a robust and compliant risk management strategy. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a financial services organization operating a hybrid cloud environment with significant on-premises legacy systems needs to identify its most critical security exposures. Which of the following approaches would best satisfy regulatory requirements for comprehensive risk management in such a mixed environment? Option A. Conduct a phased risk assessment that first identifies critical data and business processes, then maps them to all underlying infrastructure components, both on-premises and cloud, to evaluate specific threats and vulnerabilities for each. Option B. Implement a uniform set of security controls across all systems, regardless of their specific vulnerabilities or data handling capabilities. Option C. Prioritize the assessment of cloud-native applications and services, assuming legacy systems are inherently less critical due to their age. Option D. Rely solely on automated vulnerability scanning tools to generate a comprehensive risk report, without further manual analysis or contextualization. The correct answer is C. Prioritize the assessment of cloud-native applications and services, assuming legacy systems are inherently less critical due to their age. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments where disparate systems and data types must be secured. The professional difficulty lies in balancing the need for comprehensive risk assessment with the practical limitations of integrating diverse security tools and methodologies. The presence of legacy systems, cloud-based services, and on-premises infrastructure creates a complex attack surface, requiring a nuanced understanding of each component's vulnerabilities and the interdependencies between them. A superficial or overly generalized risk assessment could lead to misallocation of resources, overlooked critical threats, and ultimately, a failure to meet regulatory compliance obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased, layered risk assessment that prioritizes critical assets and data flows across the entire mixed environment. This methodology aligns with best practices for information security management, emphasizing a holistic view of risk. By first identifying and classifying sensitive data and critical business functions, then mapping these to the underlying infrastructure, both on-premises and cloud, and subsequently evaluating the specific threats and vulnerabilities relevant to each component, a more accurate and actionable risk profile can be developed. This approach allows for the tailored application of security controls, ensuring that resources are focused where they are most needed. Regulatory frameworks often mandate such a systematic and comprehensive approach to data protection and system security, requiring organizations to demonstrate due diligence in identifying and mitigating risks. Incorrect approaches analysis, focusing solely on the most technologically advanced components, e.g., cloud services, while neglecting legacy systems is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This oversight can lead to compliance breaches if sensitive data resides on or is processed by inadequately secured older systems. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence in protecting all organizational assets. Similarly, adopting a one-size-fits-all security policy across all systems, without considering the unique characteristics and vulnerabilities of each, is a flawed strategy. This can result in either over-securing less critical systems, wasting resources, or under-securing critical ones, leaving them exposed to threats. Such an approach fails to meet the requirement for proportionate and effective risk management, which is a cornerstone of most regulatory compliance mandates. Lastly, relying exclusively on automated scanning tools without human oversight and contextual analysis is also problematic. While automation is valuable, it can miss subtle vulnerabilities or misinterpret findings in complex mixed environments. This can lead to a false sense of security or an overwhelming number of false positives, hindering effective risk mitigation and potentially violating the principle of maintaining a robust security posture as required by regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach risk assessment in mixed environments by adopting a structured, iterative process. This begins with a thorough understanding of the business objectives and the data landscape. Next, a comprehensive inventory of all IT assets, including their interconnections and dependencies, is essential. The assessment should then proceed by identifying threats and vulnerabilities specific to each asset and its operating context, on-premises, cloud, legacy, etc. This information should be used to evaluate the potential impact of a security incident and the likelihood of its occurrence. Finally, based on this risk evaluation, appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and implemented, with a continuous monitoring and review process in place. This systematic approach ensures that all aspects of the mixed environment are considered, leading to a more effective and compliant security posture. Question 11. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a critical legacy application running on an unsupported operating system is essential for daily business operations and is integrated with several modern cloud-based services. Which of the following represents the most appropriate risk mitigation strategy? Option A. Isolate the legacy application on a dedicated, segmented network with strict firewall rules and implement robust monitoring for any unusual activity. Option B. Accept the inherent risks of the legacy system and focus security efforts exclusively on the modern infrastructure. Option C. Rely solely on the security measures implemented for the modern cloud-based services, assuming they will inherently protect the legacy application. Option D. Decommission the legacy application immediately, forcing a complete overhaul of business processes. The correct answer is A. Isolate the legacy application on a dedicated, segmented network with strict firewall rules and implement robust monitoring for any unusual activity. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments where legacy systems, often running on older, less secure operating systems, coexist with modern infrastructure. The professional challenge lies in balancing the operational necessity of these legacy systems with the imperative to maintain a robust security posture across the entire environment. The risk assessment must account for the inherent vulnerabilities of the legacy components and their potential impact on the interconnected modern systems, which may have different security controls and expectations. The difficulty arises from the potential for a single point of failure or a compromised legacy system to serve as an entry point for threats targeting the more sensitive modern infrastructure. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that specifically identifies and quantifies the risks associated with the legacy system's integration into the mixed environment. This includes evaluating potential attack vectors, the likelihood of exploitation, and the potential impact on both the legacy system and the interconnected modern systems. Best professional practice dictates a layered security strategy, where compensating controls are implemented for the legacy system to mitigate identified risks. This might involve network segmentation, strict access controls, regular vulnerability scanning, even if limited by the legacy OS, and robust monitoring. This approach aligns with general IT security best practices and regulatory expectations for maintaining a secure IT infrastructure, even when dealing with heterogeneous environments. The focus is on proactive risk management and mitigation, rather than simply accepting the risk. Correct approaches analysis. Ignoring the legacy system's security implications entirely is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adhere to the principle of securing the entire IT ecosystem. This oversight can lead to breaches that violate data protection regulations and compromise the integrity of modern systems, resulting in severe financial and reputational damage. Implementing security measures only on the modern systems, while neglecting the legacy component, creates a critical vulnerability. This is akin to securing the front door of a house but leaving the back door wide open. It directly contravenes the principle of a holistic security approach and fails to address the interconnected nature of mixed environments. Such an approach would be considered negligent from a regulatory standpoint, as it fails to adequately protect sensitive data and systems. Assuming the legacy system is inherently secure due to its limited functionality or perceived isolation is another critical failure. Security is not static. Even seemingly isolated systems can be compromised through indirect means or by exploiting unforeseen vulnerabilities. This assumption demonstrates a lack of understanding of modern threat landscapes and a failure to conduct a thorough risk assessment, which is a fundamental requirement for compliance and ethical IT management. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach risk assessment in mixed environments by first cataloging all components, including legacy systems. For each component, they must identify its function, its interdependencies with other systems, and its inherent vulnerabilities. The next step is to assess the potential threats and the likelihood of those threats exploiting the identified vulnerabilities. This assessment should then inform the development of a risk mitigation strategy, prioritizing controls based on the severity of the risk. For legacy systems, this often means implementing compensating controls to bridge security gaps. Continuous monitoring and periodic reassessment are crucial to adapt to evolving threats and changes in the IT environment. This systematic, risk-based approach ensures that security efforts are focused and effective, meeting both operational needs and regulatory obligations. Question 12. Research into the security posture of a large enterprise's mixed IT environment, comprising on-premises legacy servers, a private cloud infrastructure, and several public cloud services, has revealed a need for a comprehensive risk assessment. The IT security team is debating the most effective methodology to identify and prioritize potential threats and vulnerabilities. Which of the following approaches would best align with regulatory expectations for a robust risk assessment in such a complex environment? Option A. Conduct a phased risk assessment, starting with a detailed inventory of all assets across the entire mixed environment, followed by threat modeling that considers interdependencies between systems, vulnerability analysis using a combination of automated tools and manual expert review, and a prioritized evaluation of risks based on their potential impact and likelihood. Option B. Rely exclusively on automated vulnerability scanning tools to identify all potential security weaknesses, assuming that these tools are comprehensive enough to detect all relevant threats in a mixed environment. Option C. Focus the risk assessment primarily on the public cloud services, as these are generally considered the most modern and therefore most likely to be targeted by sophisticated attackers. Option D. Prioritize the remediation of risks that are easiest and quickest to address, regardless of their potential impact, to demonstrate immediate progress and resource efficiency. The correct answer is A. Conduct a phased risk assessment, starting with a detailed inventory of all assets across the entire mixed environment, followed by threat modeling that considers interdependencies between systems, vulnerability analysis using a combination of automated tools and manual expert review, and a prioritized evaluation of risks based on their potential impact and likelihood. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent complexity of assessing risks in a mixed environment IT infrastructure, where disparate systems and security models must be integrated. The core difficulty lies in identifying and quantifying vulnerabilities that could arise from the interaction between these diverse components, especially when dealing with legacy systems alongside modern cloud services. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the risk assessment is comprehensive, accurate, and actionable, without being overly burdensome or impractical. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it adopts a systematic and layered methodology. It begins with a thorough inventory and understanding of all assets within the mixed environment, including hardware, software, data, and network configurations. This is followed by a detailed threat modeling exercise, considering potential attack vectors specific to each component and their interdependencies. The subsequent vulnerability identification and analysis phase leverages both automated tools and manual inspection to uncover weaknesses. Finally, the risk evaluation and prioritization, which involves assessing the likelihood and impact of identified threats exploiting vulnerabilities, allows for the allocation of resources to mitigate the most critical risks. This structured process aligns with established risk management frameworks and regulatory expectations for due diligence in maintaining a secure IT posture. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the most recent or technologically advanced components would fail to address the significant risks posed by legacy systems, which often have known vulnerabilities and are less frequently patched. This oversight represents a regulatory failure by not adhering to the principle of comprehensive risk coverage, potentially violating data protection regulations that mandate protection of all sensitive information regardless of the system it resides on. Another incorrect approach, which relies exclusively on automated scanning tools without any manual validation or expert review, is professionally unacceptable. Automated tools can generate false positives and false negatives, leading to either wasted effort on non-existent threats or a false sense of security regarding actual vulnerabilities. This could be considered an ethical failure, as it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a potential disregard for the organization's security responsibilities. A third incorrect approach, prioritizing the mitigation of low-impact risks over high-impact ones due to perceived ease of remediation, is also professionally unsound. This demonstrates a misunderstanding of risk management principles, which dictate that resources should be allocated based on the potential severity of the impact, not just the effort required for mitigation. This could lead to significant financial or reputational damage if a high-impact, low-probability event occurs, representing a failure to meet professional standards of risk stewardship. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a continuous cycle of planning, execution, and review. Professionals should first define the scope and objectives of the risk assessment, ensuring alignment with business goals and regulatory requirements. During execution, they must employ a combination of technical expertise, analytical skills, and a deep understanding of the organization's specific context. Post-assessment, the focus shifts to implementing mitigation strategies, monitoring their effectiveness, and periodically reassessing risks as the environment evolves. This iterative approach ensures that risk management remains a dynamic and effective process. Question 13. The assessment process reveals that a critical legacy application, essential for financial reporting, is running on an unsupported operating system within a mixed environment that also includes modern cloud-based services. The organization is subject to stringent data protection regulations. Which of the following approaches best addresses the associated risks while ensuring compliance? Option A. Implement a robust network segmentation strategy to isolate the legacy application, coupled with enhanced monitoring and access controls, while initiating a project to migrate or replace the application within a defined timeline. Option B. Apply all available security patches to the unsupported operating system, even if it risks destabilizing the legacy application's functionality. Option C. Focus solely on migrating the entire mixed environment to a new, fully cloud-native platform, disregarding the immediate operational needs of the legacy application. Option D. Immediately disconnect the legacy application from the network to prevent any potential security breaches, accepting the temporary disruption to financial reporting. The correct answer is A. Implement a robust network segmentation strategy to isolate the legacy application, coupled with enhanced monitoring and access controls, while initiating a project to migrate or replace the application within a defined timeline. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in mixed environments, balancing the security needs of legacy systems with the requirements of modern, cloud-integrated infrastructure. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of risk, not just in terms of technical vulnerabilities, but also in how those vulnerabilities impact business operations and compliance within the specified regulatory framework. The need to maintain functionality for critical legacy applications while ensuring the overall security posture is not compromised demands careful judgment and a thorough risk assessment. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive, context-aware risk assessment. This involves identifying all relevant assets, potential threats, and vulnerabilities, and then evaluating the likelihood and impact of each risk. Crucially, it necessitates understanding how these risks align with the organization's risk appetite and the specific regulatory requirements applicable to mixed environments. By focusing on the potential impact on business operations and compliance, this approach ensures that mitigation strategies are proportionate and effective, adhering to the principles of due diligence and responsible system management. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on patching legacy systems without considering the broader impact on the mixed environment fails to acknowledge the interconnectedness of modern IT infrastructures. This can lead to unintended consequences, such as breaking critical legacy functionality or introducing new vulnerabilities through hasty or incompatible updates. Such an approach risks regulatory noncompliance by not adequately addressing the specific risks inherent in a mixed environment, potentially violating guidelines that mandate a holistic security strategy. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes the immediate elimination of all identified vulnerabilities, regardless of their actual exploitability or impact, can be equally problematic. This zero-risk mentality, while seemingly prudent, often leads to overspending on security measures that provide marginal benefit and can disrupt essential business processes. It demonstrates a lack of professional judgment in prioritizing risks and allocating resources effectively, potentially leading to a security posture that is both inefficient and ineffective in meeting regulatory obligations. Finally, an approach that relies on generic security best practices without tailoring them to the specific context of the mixed environment and its regulatory landscape is insufficient. While generic practices provide a baseline, they often fail to address the unique challenges and compliance demands of a hybrid infrastructure, such as data residency requirements or specific access control mandates for sensitive data residing in different parts of the environment. This can result in a security program that is technically sound in isolation, but fails to meet the overarching compliance and operational needs of the organization. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment methodology. This begins with asset identification and classification, followed by threat modeling and vulnerability analysis. The next critical step is risk evaluation, where likelihood and impact are assessed in the context of business objectives and regulatory requirements. Finally, risk treatment involves selecting and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies, which are then monitored and reviewed. This iterative process ensures that security decisions are informed, justified, and aligned with organizational goals and compliance mandates. Question 14. The control framework reveals a critical need to integrate a new cloud-based identity and access management (IAM) solution with the existing on-premises Active Directory infrastructure to support a new line of business applications. The primary concern is to ensure seamless user authentication and authorization across both environments while maintaining strict data privacy and access control, adhering to the principles of least privilege. Which of the following integration strategies best upholds these requirements and demonstrates professional best practice in a mixed environment? Option A. Deploy the cloud IAM solution in parallel to the existing Active Directory, allowing users to create separate accounts in both systems for different applications and address any security concerns post-deployment. Option B. Configure the Cloud IAM solution to mirror Active Directory's existing access control lists, ACL, without a thorough review of their appropriateness for the new cloud-based applications. Option C. Implement a hybrid IAM solution that leverages a secure gateway for federated identity management, allowing for centralized policy enforcement and granular access controls, with a phased rollout and comprehensive pre-deployment security testing. Option D. Directly synchronize all on-premises user credentials to the Cloud IAM solution without intermediate security validation, assuming the cloud provider's security is sufficient for all data types. The correct answer is C. Implement a hybrid IAM solution that leverages a secure gateway for federated identity management, allowing for centralized policy enforcement and granular access controls, with a phased rollout and comprehensive pre-deployment security testing. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid deployment of new services and the established security and compliance requirements of a mixed environment. The need to integrate a new cloud-based identity management solution with existing on-premises Active Directory infrastructure, while ensuring data privacy and access control, demands a meticulous approach. The complexity arises from the potential for misconfigurations, data leakage, and unauthorized access if not handled with due diligence, especially when dealing with sensitive user credentials and access policies across different environments. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased, risk-based integration strategy. This involves thorough assessment of the cloud solution's compatibility with existing security policies, conducting comprehensive testing in a controlled environment, and implementing robust monitoring and auditing mechanisms. This aligns with the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, ensuring that the integration does not introduce new vulnerabilities. Furthermore, it adheres to the spirit of regulatory compliance by proactively identifying and mitigating risks before full deployment, thereby safeguarding data integrity and user privacy. An incorrect approach that bypasses thorough security assessments and testing before integration would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to noncompliance with data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction, or equivalent local data privacy laws, by exposing sensitive user data to unauthorized access or breaches. It also violates ethical obligations to protect organizational assets and user information. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on the cloud provider's default security settings without custom configuration and validation, fails to account for the specific security posture and compliance requirements of the mixed environment, potentially creating security gaps and violating internal governance policies. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the regulatory landscape and internal policies governing data handling and system integration. This is followed by a comprehensive risk assessment of the proposed solution, identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities. Based on this assessment, a phased implementation plan should be developed, incorporating security controls, testing protocols, and rollback procedures. Continuous monitoring and regular audits are crucial to maintain the security and compliance posture post-implementation. Question 15. Which approach would be most effective for centrally managing security policies and software updates across a mixed environment comprising both Windows and Linux servers, while ensuring adherence to best practices for each operating system's native security model? Option A. Mandate the use of Linux-based configuration management tools for all servers, including Windows, by installing Linux compatibility layers on Windows machines. Option B. Exclusively adopt Windows-centric management tools and apply them to all servers, including Linux, assuming they can be configured to manage Linux systems through compatibility layers. Option C. Implement a unified management solution that leverages native tools and scripting to orchestrate configuration and patch deployment across both Windows and Linux systems, respecting their individual security paradigms. Option D. Rely solely on manual software updates and individual server configurations for both Windows and Linux systems, without any centralized management tools. The correct answer is C. Implement a unified management solution that leverages native tools and scripting to orchestrate configuration and patch deployment across both Windows and Linux systems, respecting their individual security paradigms. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments, balancing the need for centralized management and security with the operational realities and specific requirements of diverse operating systems and applications. The professional challenge lies in selecting a management strategy that is both effective and compliant with the implicit need for robust security and data integrity, without introducing undue complexity or risk. The inherent differences in how Windows and Linux systems handle security, permissions, and updates necessitate a nuanced approach rather than a one-size-fits-all solution. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a layered security and management strategy that leverages the strengths of each operating system's native tools while integrating them into a cohesive framework represents best professional practice. This approach acknowledges that a single tool or methodology is unlikely to be optimal for all components of a mixed environment. For Windows systems, this would involve utilizing Group Policy Objects, GPO, for centralized configuration and security settings, and Windows Server Update Services, WSUS, or Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, MECM, for patch management. For Linux systems, this would involve employing tools like Ansible, Puppet, or Chef for configuration management and automation, and package managers, e.g., apt-yum, integrated with a centralized repository, or update server for patch deployment. The integration of these disparate systems can be achieved through scripting, APIs, or a unified management console that can orchestrate actions across both platforms. This approach ensures that security policies are consistently applied, updates are managed efficiently, and the specific security models of each OS are respected, thereby minimizing vulnerabilities and maintaining compliance with general IT security best practices. Incorrect approaches analysis. Attempting to force a single management paradigm onto all systems, such as exclusively using Windows-centric tools for Linux or vice versa, would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This would likely lead to misconfigurations, security gaps, and an inability to effectively manage the unique characteristics of each operating system. For instance, trying to manage Linux permissions solely through GPOs would be technically infeasible and would bypass established Linux security mechanisms, creating vulnerabilities. Similarly, relying solely on Linux-based configuration management tools for Windows would ignore the robust security and management features built into the Windows ecosystem, potentially leading to inconsistent policy enforcement and increased administrative overhead. Another failure would be to neglect centralized patch management altogether, relying on manual updates for all systems. This approach is highly prone to human error, leading to unpatched vulnerabilities and a direct violation of security best practices and potentially regulatory requirements for timely patching. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach mixed environment management by first conducting a thorough inventory of all systems and their respective operating systems. This should be followed by an assessment of existing management tools and security policies. The next step is to identify the core management and security objectives, e.g., patch compliance, access control, configuration standardization. Based on these objectives, a strategy should be devised that leverages native capabilities of each OS while seeking integration points. This involves understanding the strengths and weaknesses of different management tools and selecting those that best meet the defined objectives for each platform. Continuous monitoring and auditing of the implemented strategy are crucial to ensure ongoing effectiveness and compliance. The decision-making process should prioritize security, stability, and efficiency, always considering the potential impact of any chosen approach on the overall integrity and compliance posture of the environment. Question 16. The review process indicates that the current network architecture in a mixed Linux and Windows environment has been identified as a potential vulnerability point due to insufficient isolation between development and production servers. Which of the following approaches best addresses this security and compliance concern? Option A. Expand the network bandwidth between development and production segments to improve performance, assuming that faster communication will indirectly enhance security by reducing latency for critical updates. Option B. Remove all firewall restrictions between development and production segments to simplify troubleshooting and allow unrestricted access for developers to test applications in a production-like environment. Option C. Rely solely on endpoint security solutions installed on individual servers to protect against threats, as network segmentation is considered an outdated security measure. Option D. Implement strict firewall rules and access control lists, ACL, to enforce the principle of least privilege between development and production network segments, ensuring only necessary ports and protocols are allowed for specific services. Correct answer is D. Implement strict firewall rules and access control lists, ACL, to enforce the principle of least privilege between development and production network segments, ensuring only necessary ports and protocols are allowed for specific services. Explanation. The review process indicates a potential misconfiguration in the network segmentation strategy, which is a critical aspect of maintaining security and compliance in mixed environments. The challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient data flow and resource accessibility, with the imperative to isolate sensitive systems and data from less trusted zones. This requires a nuanced understanding of the organization's data classification, threat model, and regulatory obligations. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment to identify critical assets and data, followed by the implementation of granular access controls and network segmentation policies based on the principle of least privilege. This aligns with best practices for security architecture and is often a requirement under various data protection regulations that mandate the protection of sensitive information through appropriate technical and organizational measures. By segmenting the network, the impact of a security breach in one area is contained, preventing lateral movement of threats to more critical systems. This proactive stance is essential for demonstrating due diligence and maintaining a robust security posture. An incorrect approach would be to implement broad, overly permissive access rules between network segments. This fails to adhere to the principle of least privilege, significantly increasing the attack surface and the potential for unauthorized access or data exfiltration. Such a configuration would likely violate regulatory requirements that mandate the protection of sensitive data through access controls and segregation. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on perimeter security without internal segmentation. This leaves the internal network vulnerable to threats that bypass the perimeter, and it does not address the need to isolate different types of data or systems within the organization, which is a common regulatory expectation. Finally, implementing segmentation without a clear understanding of data flows and application dependencies can lead to operational disruptions, but the failure to segment at all, or to segment inadequately, represents a more significant security and compliance failure. Professionals should employ a systematic decision-making process that begins with understanding the organization's specific security and compliance objectives. This involves consulting relevant policies, standards, and regulations. A risk-based approach, prioritizing the protection of the most critical assets, is paramount. Regular audits and penetration testing should be conducted to validate the effectiveness of segmentation strategies and identify any deviations from policy or emerging vulnerabilities. Question 17. The analysis reveals that a mixed environment comprising Windows servers and Linux workstations is experiencing inconsistent application of security policies, particularly concerning user access controls and software update management. The IT team is considering several approaches to rectify this situation and ensure compliance with data protection regulations. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices for managing security in such a heterogeneous environment? Option A. Focus on strengthening network perimeter security and implementing VLAN-based segmentation to isolate different segments of the network, assuming that internal threats are less likely. Option B. Implement a centralized identity and access management (IAM) solution that integrates with both Windows Active Directory and Linux LDAP, and deploy a unified endpoint management (UM) tool capable of enforcing security configurations and patch deployment across all Windows and Linux endpoints. Option C. Prioritize the deployment of the quickest and easiest to implement security measures, even if they do not provide comprehensive coverage across all systems, to address immediate compliance concerns. Option D. Rely on the native security tools and administrative consoles for each operating system, ensuring that administrators are trained on the specific tools for both Windows and Linux. The correct answer is B. Implement a centralized identity and access management (IAM) solution that integrates with both Windows Active Directory and Linux LDAP, and deploy a unified endpoint management (UM) tool capable of enforcing security configurations and patch deployment across all Windows and Linux endpoints. Explanation: the analysis reveals a common challenge in mixed environments, ensuring consistent security policy enforcement across diverse operating systems and network segments. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for robust security with the operational realities of managing heterogeneous systems, where different platforms may have varying native security capabilities and administrative tools. This requires a deep understanding of both the underlying technologies and the relevant regulatory framework to avoid misconfigurations or policy gaps. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a unified, policy-driven security posture. By leveraging a centralized management solution that can enforce granular access controls and security configurations across both Windows and Linux systems, it directly addresses the core requirement of consistent policy application. This aligns with the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are fundamental to robust cybersecurity and often implicitly or explicitly mandated by regulatory frameworks requiring risk management and data protection. The ability to audit and report on compliance from a single pane of glass is crucial for demonstrating adherence to these regulations. An incorrect approach that relies solely on native tools for each operating system fails to provide a cohesive security strategy. This leads to fragmented security controls, increased administrative overhead, and a higher risk of misconfiguration or oversight. From a regulatory perspective, this fragmentation makes it difficult to demonstrate consistent application of security policies, potentially leading to findings of noncompliance during audits. It also increases the attack surface by creating potential inconsistencies in patch management, user access, and firewall rules. Another incorrect approach that focuses only on network-level segmentation without addressing endpoint security is also professionally unacceptable. While network segmentation is a vital security layer, it does not mitigate threats that originate from within a segment or exploit vulnerabilities on individual endpoints. Regulations often require a multi-layered security approach that includes endpoint protection and robust access controls, not just network isolation. Relying solely on network segmentation leaves systems vulnerable to internal threats and sophisticated external attacks that bypass perimeter defenses. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes ease of implementation over comprehensive security coverage is a direct abdication of professional responsibility. Security decisions must be driven by risk assessment and regulatory requirements, not by convenience. Implementing security measures that are easy to deploy but offer limited protection creates a false sense of security and leaves the organization exposed to significant risks, which can have severe regulatory and financial consequences. The professional reasoning process for such a scenario should involve 1. Identifying all systems and their operating environments within the mixed environment. 2. Understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the organization's data and operations. 3. Assessing the security capabilities and limitations of each operating system and the existing infrastructure. 4. Evaluating centralized management solutions that can bridge the gaps between different platforms and enforce a unified security policy. 5. Prioritizing solutions that offer granular control, comprehensive auditing, and reporting capabilities to demonstrate compliance. 6. Implementing a defense-in-depth strategy that includes endpoint security, network segmentation, and robust access controls. 7. Regularly reviewing and updating security policies and configurations to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. Question 18. System analysis indicates a need to integrate a new cloud-based identity and access management (IAM) solution into an existing on-premises infrastructure to streamline user provisioning and enhance security. The organization operates in a jurisdiction with strict data protection laws governing the processing and storage of personal data. Which of the following approaches best adheres to professional best practices and regulatory compliance for this integration? Option A. Implement the Cloud IAM solution using only the default security configurations provided by the vendor, without further customization or verification against specific organizational needs or regulatory mandates. Option B. Immediately integrate the Cloud IAM solution to leverage its advanced features and cost efficiencies, assuming the vendor's standard security measures are sufficient. Option C. Prioritize the integration of the cloud IAM solution based on the lowest cost offering, with security and compliance checks to be performed post-implementation. Option D. Conduct a thorough security and compliance audit of the proposed cloud IAM solution, verifying its adherence to data protection regulations, data residency requirements, and the organization's security policies before proceeding with integration. Correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough security and compliance audit of the proposed cloud IAM solution, verifying its adherence to data protection regulations, data residency requirements, and the organization's security policies before proceeding with integration. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid deployment of new technologies and the need for robust security and compliance within a mixed environment. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that the integration of a new cloud-based identity management solution does not inadvertently create vulnerabilities or violate existing data protection regulations, particularly concerning user data privacy and access control. Professionals must balance the business imperative for agility with the non-negotiable requirements of regulatory adherence. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, risk-based assessment before full implementation. This involves a detailed review of the cloud provider's security certifications, e.g., ISO 27001, SOC 2, an evaluation of how the solution handles data residency and sovereignty requirements, and a comprehensive understanding of the access control mechanisms and audit logging capabilities. This proactive stance ensures that the chosen solution aligns with the organization's security policies and relevant regulatory frameworks, such as GDPR, if applicable to the data processed, or specific national data protection laws. It demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to responsible technology adoption, minimizing the likelihood of breaches or non-compliance. An incorrect approach that involves immediate integration without prior due diligence fails to uphold professional standards. This could lead to regulatory violations if the cloud solution does not meet data protection requirements, such as inadequate consent mechanisms or insufficient data anonymization. Ethically, it exposes users to potential data misuse and breaches. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on cost savings without considering security implications, is professionally negligent. This overlooks the significant financial and reputational damage that can result from security incidents and regulatory fines. A third incorrect approach, relying solely on the cloud provider's default security settings without customization or verification, is also flawed. Organizations have a responsibility to ensure their specific configurations meet their unique risk profile and regulatory obligations, rather than blindly trusting vendor defaults. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the new technology. Next, evaluate the impact of these risks against business objectives and regulatory requirements. Then, explore and compare different mitigation strategies, including vendor selection, configuration best practices, and ongoing monitoring. Finally, document the decision-making process, including the rationale for the chosen approach and any residual risks, to ensure accountability and facilitate future audits. Question 19. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of unauthorized access to sensitive customer data from external networks, with a high impact if such an event occurs. It also indicates a low likelihood of unauthorized access to internal development documentation from internal networks, with a moderate impact. Considering these findings and the need to maintain productivity in a mixed environment, which of the following approaches best aligns with best practices for security policy implementation? Option A. Mandate the use of a full-tunnel VPN for all remote access to any internal resource, regardless of data sensitivity or user role. Option B. Delegate the decision-making process for implementing new security controls to the junior IT support team with minimal oversight. Option C. Implement multi-factor authentication for all external access to customer data resources and enforce granular access controls based on user roles and data sensitivity. For internal access to development documentation, maintain existing authentication and implement logging for audit purposes. Option D. Implement a strict firewall rule blocking all inbound connections to the internal network, requiring all users to access external resources only. The correct answer is C. Implement multi-factor authentication for all external access to customer data resources and enforce granular access controls based on user roles and data sensitivity. For internal access to development documentation, maintain existing authentication and implement logging for audit purposes. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational realities and potential impact on user productivity. The core difficulty lies in interpreting risk assessment data and translating it into actionable, compliant, and practical security policies. Professionals must not only understand the technical implications of security measures, but also their broader organizational impact and adherence to relevant regulatory frameworks. The correct approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing a layered security strategy that aligns with the principle of least privilege and data protection mandates. It involves a thorough assessment of the specific risks identified in the matrix, considering the sensitivity of the data being accessed and the potential impact of a breach. Implementing granular access controls, robust authentication mechanism, and continuous monitoring directly addresses the identified vulnerabilities without imposing overly restrictive measures that could hinder legitimate operations. This approach is ethically sound as it aims to protect organizational assets and user data while maintaining operational efficiency, aligning with the spirit of regulatory compliance that emphasizes proportionality and effectiveness. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on implementing the most stringent security control without considering its operational impact fails to meet the standard of professional judgment. This could lead to user frustration, workarounds that bypass security, and ultimately, a false sense of security. Such an approach might violate regulatory principles that require security measures to be proportionate to the risk and not unduly burdensome. Another incorrect approach that relies on a single, broad security control, such as a blanket VPN requirement for all access, ignores the nuanced risks identified in the matrix. This is inefficient and can create unnecessary friction for users accessing low-risk resources. It fails to demonstrate a deep understanding of the threat landscape and the principle of applying controls where they are most needed, potentially leading to a misallocation of resources and a failure to adequately address specific vulnerabilities. A third incorrect approach that involves deferring the decision to a less experienced team without providing clear guidance or oversight is a failure of leadership and professional responsibility. This abdicates the critical task of risk management and policy implementation, potentially leading to inconsistent or inadequate security measures. It also fails to uphold the ethical obligation to ensure that security decisions are made by competent individuals with a comprehensive understanding of the risks and regulatory requirements. The professional reasoning process for such situations involves a systematic evaluation of the risk matrix, consultation with stakeholders, including IT, legal, and business units, consideration of the organization's specific threat model and compliance obligations, and the selection of security controls that are effective, efficient, and proportionate to the identified risks. It requires a balance between technical expertise, business acumen, and a strong ethical compass. Question 20. During the evaluation of a proposed new cloud-based service integration within a mixed on-premises and cloud environment, which approach best aligns with regulatory compliance and professional best practices for ensuring system integrity and data protection? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, define necessary security controls, and implement them prior to the full integration, followed by thorough testing and validation. Option B. Proceed with the integration immediately to meet business demands, relying on post-deployment monitoring tools to detect any security anomalies or compliance deviations. Option C. Integrate the service and then address any identified security or compliance issues as they arise, prioritizing business continuity over immediate security hardening. Option D. Delegate the responsibility for security and compliance of the new service to the cloud provider without independent verification, assuming their controls are sufficient. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the integration immediately to meet business demands, relying on post-deployment monitoring tools to detect any security anomalies or compliance deviations. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in mixed environments, balancing the need for rapid deployment of new services with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The professional challenge lies in the inherent tension between agility and control. Organizations often face pressure to innovate quickly, which can lead to shortcuts in security and governance if not managed carefully. The requirement to adhere to specific regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data protection and system integrity in mixed environments, adds a layer of complexity. Professionals must navigate these competing demands, while ensuring that all actions are justifiable under the relevant legal and ethical guidelines. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, risk-based methodology that is aligned with regulatory expectations. By conducting a thorough risk assessment and implementing appropriate controls before deployment, the organization demonstrates due diligence. This proactive stance is crucial for meeting compliance obligations, such as those that might be stipulated by data privacy laws requiring the protection of sensitive information, or industry-specific regulations demanding secure system configurations. It ensures that potential vulnerabilities are identified and mitigated, thereby reducing the likelihood of security incidents and subsequent regulatory penalties. This approach also fosters a culture of security and compliance, which is a cornerstone of responsible IT management. An incorrect approach that overlooks the need for a formal risk assessment and control implementation before deployment fails to meet professional standards and regulatory requirements. Such an approach could lead to the introduction of unaddressed security vulnerabilities, potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized access or modification. This directly contravenes principles of data protection and system integrity mandated by various regulations. Furthermore, deploying services without proper vetting can result in noncompliance with operational security standards, leading to potential fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on post-deployment monitoring to identify issues is also professionally deficient. While monitoring is essential, it is a reactive measure. Relying on it as the primary security strategy means that vulnerabilities are exploited before they are detected, which is unacceptable from a risk management perspective. This reactive posture can lead to significant breaches and noncompliance with regulations that require proactive security measures. It demonstrates a lack of foresight and a failure to implement preventative controls, which are fundamental to best practices in IT security and governance. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's risk appetite, the specific regulatory landscape, and the potential impact of new deployments. Professionals should always advocate for a phased approach that includes 1. Thorough planning and design, incorporating security and compliance requirements from the outset. 2. A comprehensive risk assessment to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities. 3. The implementation of appropriate security controls and mitigation strategies. 4. Rigorous testing and validation. And 5. Ongoing monitoring and review. This systematic process ensures that innovation does not come at the expense of security and compliance.